Hey y'all! Well, today we're going to be doing a more in-depth dive into this Sparkos Gemini headphone amp that, to me, it's really a preamp too. And I know he sells this as a headphone amp on his site, but I did a previous shootout with some other preamps, and this thing's a really awesome preamp too. And for the price point this thing's at, I think it knocks it out of the park. I have now had a chance to listen to it with some headphones. It really sounds good as a headphone amp too. And the features that it's got really lends itself well to that use as well. But again, for you folks that are looking for a preamp to use with your system, whether you have some monoblocks or power amps with no, volume controls on them, or you just want to put this in line with your solid state integrated amp to try to give it a little warmth and smooth sound, I think it's a great option. So today we're going to go over the internal adjustments. I'm going to show you what the inside of this guy looks like. I think we've opened this up in another video, but I want to go into more detail, talk about like which tubes work with which settings, and put a list of all the tubes that we can use. Maybe give a little subjective thing at the end on what some of the different tubes sound like. And yeah, let's dive into this thing and see what it's all about. So let's take an in-depth look at this little Sparkos Gemini headphone amp slash preamp that we reviewed in a previous shootout, and just go over some of the features it has and how to work with this thing. So obviously we got a power button here. We've got the balanced headphone jack here. We've got a 1/4-inch headphone jack here. We've got a gain button that can be used to increase or reduce the output gain. And then we have the volume knob, which is using an Alps Blue Velvet pot, which is a very high quality unit. And then on the back, we have the RCA jacks, and we have the IAC connector. So one of the features this amp has is it's got some internal jumpers to adjust the sonic signature of this guy, and it's very easy to open up. There's 3 screws on each side of the amplifier that hold the cover on, and Sparkos is fine with you opening this thing up to play around with these jumpers. And they actually have instructions on their website about how to work with these jumpers, how to open the amp up, etc. And like I said, there's 3 screws on each side that we're going to take out here, and we'll kind of fast forward through this part, and there we go. And then you want to drop it down like that. It makes it a little easier to pop the tube out. And like I said in another video, if you have a hard time getting a hold of the tube to pull it out, you can get a little bit of masking tape and kind of put it on each side of the top of the tube, and then it gives you a little tag to pull on to pull the tube out. So here we are, and you can see we got a internal power supply that's powered off of this IEC connector. Then you have obviously some of the power switches and other stuff here. You can see all the capacitors and stuff that are regulating the power supply, which is again nice to see this instead of just like a little wall wart. But what we're in here to look at are these jumpers that are around the tube socket. Let me zoom in here so we get a better view of them. And here are the 2 Pro op amps that are obviously Sparkos units that are installed in here. And there's a little close-up of this Alps Blue Velvet pot, which is a nice made in Japan unit. So back to these jumpers. Now this comes with a 6922, which is a ECC88 or a 6DJ8. And that's what comes in the amp. But it also allows you to use a 6AQ8. It also allows the use of a 6CG7 and a 6N1. And those are all 6.3 volt tubes, which is what this jumper up here does. And those are type 1 tubes, as shown in this sheet that they have on their website. And you can see it splits them up into 6 volt and 12 volt tubes. Now, tubes like the 12AX7 can also be powered up by 6.3 volts, but it's wired up using the center tap of the heater and then the other two ends, where the 6 volt tubes just have 6 volt connections. And that's the difference with this jumper, is there's a different pinout on those tubes. So you want to make sure that you match this jumper to the type tube you're using, whether it's a type 1 or a type 2. And you just simply pull it out, stick it on the other one, and then you can use the 12 volt style tubes. Now, one thing he warns about is never put two jumpers. Like, you don't want to, if you take this one over here and say, oh, I'm going to stick this guy over here too, bad move. That's going to short out the heaters and probably do some bad stuff, because he's got it highlighted in the instructions. So never have jumpers on both of these. Have it either one, the 12 volt, move it over here to the 6 volt. And like I said, there's a chart like this that shows you the different tube types and where to put the jumper. So that's all nice and simple. The next thing we have is the low and high bias. And what the instructions are saying, that in the high bias mode, which is with this turned sideways, instead of being connected across the pins like that, if you have it like this, that's considered the jumper being out of the circuit, and that's high bias. And then if you connect the two pins, that's low bias, which is going to give you a more tubey, warm sound than the high bias will. And so that's something you can play with the different tubes and see if you like the way it sounds one way or the other, which is a really nice feature to be able to either emphasize or de-emphasize the impact of the tube in the circuit or in your system. The last pair of jumpers here are also a really neat feature. If you got a really hot input into this device, like my phono stage has got a pretty hot output that you would be connecting to this to listen with headphones, and you find that you're just using like the first quarter range of the volume knob, and it makes it difficult to find that three little bears nice perfect spot on the volume. It's either too loud or too soft when you just breathe on it. If you remove these two jumpers, and again, you just turn them sideways so you don't lose these guys, that puts negative 15 dB of attenuation on the input signal, which will pretty drastically reduce the strength of the input signal and will make the volume control work in more of the full range instead of, that just little, from 7 to 9 o'clock range that sometimes happen if you have too hot of a input signal. So there we go. That's where all the jumpers go. I'm going to put this thing back like it came from the factory. And there's our tube. And that's kind of the feature set on this guy. Really think it's a well thought out little headphone amp that also works very well as a preamp. And I think this is a good place to wrap up this video. Well, if you couldn't tell from the earlier part of this video, I really like this product. I feel like it's a good marriage of new tech and old tech. It gives you the option of running a whole slew of different tubes. Changing some jumpers inside can change not only the type of tube that can be used, but also how that tube is biased, which will change the sonic signature of the output of this. The gain button is really nice for when you need the gain or when you don't. I've seen too many products that the gain's too hot, and then the volume control is like you give it one little breath and it's too loud, and one little breath it's too quiet. By being able to adjust the gain that you need, it makes the volume control a lot easier to hit the in-room sound pressure level that you're looking for. And simple controls. I really hate devices that just got too many different knobs and stuff. And for you folks that are regular viewers on the channel, I just abhor tone controls being in the signal path. I've never heard tone controls that don't have, at least analog ones, that don't have like this veil over the sound, like, you know, not a blanket, but almost like, you know, you've put some like tissue paper over the speakers, especially the tweeters. It just kind of sounds muffled. It just, and then you're turning up the EQ, trying to override what just having those tone controls in the circuit are doing, and this avoids all of that. And, you know, to me, it's not trying to be gimmicky. It's got one tube. It's a dual triode tube, so you're getting it, you know, tube on each channel, but you're only having to buy one tube or tube roll. And some of these units have like 4 expensive tubes you have to buy just to see, hey, do I like those or do I like these? And with this, you got one tube you're buying. And so it makes it a lot easier to have a variety of tubes. And maybe some of them sound better than others. And so you can have that kind of mix and match thing. So, yeah. For this price point, I mean, there's other kind of these hybrid tube preamps out there around the same price point. The one I sell, which is an all-tube version, is $1,000, and they're really limited production. These are definitely like a mass-produced kind of product that's much easier to get than what I sell. And yeah, it just really sounds good. So I'm not trying to take away from my sales on producing this, because I do feel like this is a little bit different product, and mine doesn't have a headphone jack. So to me, this is kind of shooting for a different market. But don't see this as just a headphone amp. This is absolutely a great little preamp to use for any of your needs that might require a preamp. So again, hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. If you like the video or like the channel, please subscribe. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters and you subscribers and regular viewers of the channel. Hope you enjoyed this little review. And if you decide to buy one of these, tell Andrew Skunkie sent you. Till the next video, have a nice day.